All right, so first thing we'll be doing is quadratics, all right? So this is new stuff we haven't really worked before, so we're going to go through it pretty slowly. I highly recommend, especially because of the way this set is set up, to follow through on Google Classroom. I put these notes on Google Classroom, so just follow along in case you can't see anything clearly. At least you can look at the notes and see there, okay? So quadratic equations. There's a standard form. That standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. A, b, and c are all numbers. A will never be 0, okay? All quadratics will look at least something like this, okay? There's always going to be an x squared, an x, and some numbers thrown in there, all right? The highest exponent, so the highest degree, will always be a 2, okay? If it's not a 2, then it's not a quadratic equation, all right? There can't be x to the third power, x to the first. The highest x exponent can only be 2. All right, so we will be graphing in this unit. The graph of a quadratic equation is called a parabola, okay? This is what they look like. Two shapes for a parabola, up or down, all right? It'll always look like a U though. So here's how we get the two separate things, okay? The two separate graphs. If A, so the first part of the equation, if A is positive, so if A is bigger than 0, the graph will open upwards, okay? We call it positive. So if A is bigger than 0, the graph will open up. I call it, even though it's kind of corny, I call it a happy graph because I can draw eyes on here. It's a smiley face, happy graph, okay? If A is less than 0, so if A is negative, then the parabola will open downwards. It'll be opening down. And again, in this case, that's a sad graph because if you put eyes on it, it's a frowny face. You know, corny, but whatever, it helps you remember. So if A is positive, happy graph. If A is negative, sad graph. A will always be the number in front of x squared, okay? So you always want to look in front of the number of the x squared, and that is A. So that's the first part, pretty simple. Now we'll get into some actual examples, okay? So you always look at the number in front of x squared. That'll tell you if it opens up or down, if the graph will open up or down. In these 5 examples, all we're going to do is we're going to state the values for A, B, and C, and then we're going to say if the graph opens upwards, so if it's a happy graph, or if it opens down and it's a sad graph, okay? So first, y equals x squared plus 6x minus 2. First thing we do is we find A, B, and C. Okay, so A, B, and C. Well, A is always the number in front of x squared, okay? So x squared is alone here, which means that there's an invisible 1 in front of that x squared. So A will equal 1 in this instance because there's an invisible 1 in front of that x squared. B is the number in front of x, okay? So you look at the number in front of x, that's a positive 6. So B is 6. Last number, whatever this last number is, the number with no x's on it, that's your C. So we look there, it's a minus 2. You always want to include the sign that's in front of the number, okay? So A is 1, B is 6, C is negative 2. Now we want to see if the graph would open up or if it would open down. Well, this 1 right here is positive. A is positive, positive 1. So this graph will open upwards. It's a happy graph, okay? So A is 1, B is 6, C is negative 2, and this graph will open up. Example number 2 here. You might not be able to see it, but there's a negative sign in front of that x squared. So real quick, we're going to want to find A, B, and C. Okay, so look in front of the x squared. It's just a minus sign. Okay, that means it's a negative 1. There's a 1 in front of that x squared, and since there's a minus sign there, it's a negative 1. B is the number in front of x. So we can see there's a 2 there, so our B is 2. The last number will be C. It's a 1. So, does the graph open up or down? Well, A is negative, so the graph has to open downwards. And that's essentially all you're doing for this first part. Just label A, B, and C, and then if it opens up or down. Really quickly, number 3. So 5x squared plus 3x plus 5. 5 is in front of x squared, so A is 5. B is the number in front of x, that's a 3. C is the last number with no x, it's another 5. So is A positive or negative? That will tell us if this is an up graph or a down graph. A is positive 5, so it has to open upwards. Number 4. Number 4 is a little different. Okay, all of this is mixed up. Okay, x squared is not in front, the normal x isn't in the middle, and then 2 is not at the end. Okay, you can reorder this if you want, or you could also just remember that the number in front of x squared is a, the number in front of x is b, and the number with no x is c. I'll reorder it though. X squared goes first, so our x squared term is here, a negative x squared. Then we have a minus 8x and a plus 2. So this is the way the equation would be written normally. This is standard form is what we call it. And even though the original was all mixed up, you can just rewrite it in a way that you're more familiar with. And now it's easy for us to tell what A, B, and C are. A is negative 1, B is negative 8, C is 2. A is a negative 1, so this graph opens down. Last example, number 5, 1 plus 2x squared. Doesn't look like it, but this is actually a quadratic equation, okay? It's missing the b term. It's missing just a plain old x term, but it's still a quadratic because it has an x squared term, okay? If I would put this in standard form, it would be 2x squared, x squared goes first, plus the 1. So if I wanted to find a, b, and c, well, a is the number in front of x squared, so a is 2. There's no normal x term. That means b is 0. There's no x, so there can't be a b. And the number with no x is 1, so that's c. A is positive 2, so this graph opens up. All right, so that's just how to tell what A, B, and C are and if it opens up or down. Last thing we'll be doing in this notes is discussing something called the vertex, okay? So the vertex of a parabola is the point in the very middle of the graph, okay? This point right here, okay? If you would cut the graph in half like this, the vertex is the point where it would be right in the middle of the U, okay? So this is the vertex. Both up and down versions of the graph have it. It's always just the point in the very middle, okay? We need to learn how to find that vertex. We need to learn how to find that point. And luckily, we have an equation for it. So the equation is x equals negative b over 2a, okay? We can use that equation to find the vertex with just the normal equation, okay? So what'll happen is I'll give you this normal equation, and you'll have to use this formula in order to find the vertex. So negative b over 2a. We'll write that up here so we don't forget. So x equals negative b over 2a. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to find a, b, and c, and then we're going to use the vertex equation to find the vertex, okay? So example 1 here, x squared plus 6x minus 2. Let's find a, b, and c. Okay. A is the number in front of x squared, so a is 1. B is the number in front of this normal x, so that's a 6. C is that last number, negative 2. Now, I'm going to use the vertex equation. So x equals, on the top is negative b. So b is 6, so negative 6 over, on the bottom is 2a. that just means you do 2 times whatever a is. So 2 times 1. That gives us negative 6 over 2, or negative 3. So x equals negative 3. Okay. So this part might be a little different, a little challenging, okay? We got one number, x equals negative 3, but that's not the vertex. It's only half of it, okay? If I flip back to this page, okay, the vertex is a point on the graph, right? That means it's a coordinate. It's an xy coordinate. What I just found is the x coordinate. So I found half of that point. I need the y. I don't know why. Okay? But what I can do, okay, this equation, it's an equation. So it's a y equals x squared plus 6x minus 2, right? This is an equation. Y equals this. So to find the y, all you have to do now is plug this x into the original equation, and it will give you your y. So y equals, and I'm running out of room here, so I'm going to have to put it under number 3. Anyways, so y equals x squared, okay? We got x was negative 3. So that means negative 3 squared plus 6 times x. Well, x was negative 3, so I put a negative 3 there. And then minus 2 was at the end. So y equals negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 minus 2. Go ahead and solve that. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Plus 6 times negative 3 is a negative 18 minus 2. Plug this all into your calculator, okay? I'll just work it out though. 9 plus negative 18 is negative 9 minus 2. So that means y is negative 11. Okay, so our coordinate for our vertex is x equals negative 3, y is negative 11. So the answer for number 1 is negative 3, negative 11. It's a coordinate, so there has to always be 2 points, 2 numbers. Okay? Kind of confusing, but the vertex equation, the x equals negative b over 2a, you use that to find the first point, and then you use this first point in the original equation to give you the second. And that will give you the vertex. So the vertex on this quadratic is negative 3 and negative 11. All right, I know that took up a lot of room. Let's do number 2, okay? Number 2 is negative x squared plus 6x minus 1. Let's find a, b, and c. A is negative 1, b is 6, c is negative 1. Use the vertex equation. So x equals negative b on top, so negative 6, over 2a. A was negative 1, so 2 times negative 1. That simplifies to negative 6 over negative 2, which ends up being positive 3. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is positive 3. Now, you're going to plug this x equals 3 into the original equation. So y equals negative x squared. So negative 3 squared. I'm just plugging a 3 in anytime I see an x. So this first x becomes a 3. Plus 6. Plug in 3 for this next x. So 6 times 3 with the minus 1 at the end. 3 squared is 9. Tack on that negative that was on front. Plus 6 times 3 is 18 minus 1. Put that all in the calculator. It'll give you 8. So y is 8 here. X is 3. Y is 8. So 3, 8 is our coordinate for the vertex. Since I ran out of room for number 3, I'll let you guys do that as practice. But essentially that is the first part of quadratics. Again, if you have any questions, just email me. I can put out another video or something. But that's all we need to know for now. How to find A, B, and C, how to find out if it opens up or down, and then how to find the vertex.